So it's time to start, and I want to welcome you all to this workshop. And this is always one of my favorites. I love to hear from Kathy Grant and what she's got going with the different schools and students and teachers here in the city of Lodi. And so, Kathy, as I was mentioning to those of you who joined us earlier, her internet died right before this workshop, but she is online. She's using her phone, and so she'll be able to talk to us. But Kathy, why don't you introduce to us, tell us a little bit about storm drain detectives, and also just a little bit where you've come from, but what's going on these days.
Yeah, hi everybody. So City of Lodi, I'm your Watershed Program Coordinator, and helped start the Storm Drain Detectives back in the year 2000. So this is going into our 21st year of student monitoring. And we are a program that monitors monthly with, throughout the year, about 200 students will cycle through the monitoring days, and they will learn how to run the equipment, calibrate, run the equipment, and then gather data, and then we post it online, so it's available to the public, Lodi.gov's website. We test for dissolved oxygen and turbidity and nitrates, electrical conductivity, what did I miss, Dylan? pH, and then we've just recently started testing for bacteria, E. coli, which has been really interesting. You'll get a glimpse of that online. We are not posting that data to the public yet. We're still trying to figure out what it means. But we have a really good relationship with our wastewater plant laboratory staff, so it's really been hand over hand. They are teaching me and teaching the teachers and the student, Dylan, the other students that have been coming out with us, how to do this correctly. So what we've done with the COVID season is we have adapted so that the students are no longer going out with us. So we did have 2 students last week, I will confess, or earlier this week. We just are doing it with the teachers. So we have Lodi High, Judd Atwater, Melissa Turner, and then from Joe Center Charter School, we have Janine Jacinto, a middle school teacher, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We have Mel Martinez from Reese, 6th grade class. Who else is there? Sandy Starr from Tokay High. So those teachers have been cycling through with me every month, going out to the river, doing all 5 sites together as a group, which has been really good. And then the data gets back to the kids through the teachers or through the website. So we're just kind of making it up as we go, but we have continued monitoring.
Okay. So the program's continuing. They're going to be able to take this data and still use it. And also, you understand you're using videos or trying to create videos that the students can still feel like they're a part of it.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're going to use the first one with the students will be the one that your son created, which is wonderful, the ones that we'll see today. That will get into the classroom, and then the kids can actually see. So this year, these students have not seen the river at all 5 sites. So I'm excited that they can finally do that, and the teachers then connect it with the data and then take over as helping them interpret. You know, there's different grade levels, different curriculum. It's being used in a lot of different ways. But yes, we are reaching students, and we'll do more videos, more aspects of the watershed runoff, but only one on the monitoring. Okay, well, great. Why don't we take a look at your most recent monitoring trip out there. And so we have this video. It's about 19 minutes long, and it's gonna what are they going to see in this, Kathy? Yeah, so this is the very first 2021 school year, August 25th monitoring day, where you're going to see the teachers, Judd Atwater, and who else is in there? Janine Jacinto. You're going to see Dylan. You'll see Claudia from the staff. She's an environmental compliance inspector, and she's been really helpful in us trying to figure out how to do bacteria from us as citizen monitors. And by the way, I have to give a shout out to State Water Board, to Eric Burrs, who from the Clean Water team, who really helped us figure out the equipment we should use, et cetera. So what you're going to see is us spending almost 4 hours out there on the river in the middle of that heat wave. So it's really hot, but we got it done. So take it away, John.
All right, let's take a look at this.
Hi everybody, welcome to Storm Drain Detective Monitoring Day. I'm Kathy Grant, City of Lodi Watershed Program Coordinator, and today the Storm Drain Detectives around us from Lodi High, Tokay High, and Joe Stoner Charter School will monitor the river. So what happened here, just before you got here, was that we calibrated our equipment, and we'll talk more about our equipment once we're out of the river. So we'll see you there. Let's go.
With school, it's more manageable. Yeah. Oh, you want me to? Yeah.
I've heard about the dogs. If you want to put those on the table.
Nobody grabbed the DO meter?
Okay. So now I'm taking electrical conductivity, or EC, of the water. And we like to slowly swirl it around, make sure it's always moving, and you can see the number and make sure it's stable. And right now the EC says it's 50. And we're going to take the EC 3 times to make sure it works. So we're just going to, each time we'll clean off the probe, making sure it's all clean. Then we'll go back in.
What's your first reading, John?
50. It's pretty stabilized, still at 50. So we'll go one more time.
50.
Clean the probe. So EC reading 50 for reading number 2.
50 for reading 2.
Correct. Okay, reading number 3 is also 50. So we always take 3 readings.
50 for reading 3.
And then what are you doing over here?
Recording all 3 of them, and then if they were different, then we'll do an average. But since they're all the same, I don't have to think.
The next reading we're going to take is pH, and so we have a pH meter. We do the same thing. We take 3 readings and we get an average of it. So I put it in the water. The pH meter takes longer to get calibrated. You can see the numbers. So it takes a while. It's slowly changing, so we want to make sure we get an accurate reading. And we do reading number 3, and we always try and make sure, as you tell the person documenting, to repeat it back to you so we know we're talking about the same number. Okay, reading number 3, 7.5.
7 5/10.
That's why we do it 3 times. Temperature is 21.1 degrees.
Temperature is 21.1.
1 degrees Celsius.
Repeat it one more time, please.
21.1 degrees Celsius.
Is that with the 21 and 1/10 degrees Celsius? Was that after subtracting?
So just correct
We
it.
have a correction of
Minus 3/10.
minus 3/10. There's a correction on the back of the thermometer because it's been calibrated, so we want to make sure that we address that because all thermometers are a little different. While we're waiting for the pH to wait the 2 minutes, we're going to do another dissolved oxygen test. It's called a chemet. So we fill up a container with the river water, and in this tube is a vacuum tube made of glass. We break it off. Now, as you see, the color starting to change. Now what we need to do is slowly move the bubble back and forth to make sure everything, the reagent, is mixed well with the water. And we're gonna have to wait a couple minutes on this one also. So Dylan, can you hold this and make this go back and forth while I get rid of the waste? So since there's a small piece of glass in here, we want to make sure we just don't dump it on the ground, so we get rid of the waste in a waste container. Then to compare the dissolved oxygen, this is what we use, and we always try and have multiple people read this together. So Dylan's going to come over here and we're going to look at this together, matching it up and seeing where it falls. And it doesn't have to fall exactly on a number, so if we think it's between two, we can use the odd number in between. What do you think? Looks a little lighter. I think
Probably 9. Yeah.
Okay. Dissolved oxygen chemet reading is 9. Now we're doing the last dissolved oxygen test. Mrs. Turner tied the sensor on to here, so we need to float it in the water, and we're going to get a dissolved oxygen test. So we've emptied the bucket out, so the bucket just floats on top, and you can see the sensor in there. But if you notice, we want to keep the bucket moving
And the sensor off the bottom.
and not touch the bottom with the sensor. And then Mrs. Turner's going to watch the meter, and we have 2 things on the meter. It's going to tell us another water temperature electronically, and it's going to tell us the milligrams per liter of dissolved oxygen in the water. So she's going to have to watch it. It's going to go down and up, and then once it gets fairly stable, then she will take a reading. What do you think?
964 at 20.1.
And because we have multiple sites, we're going to leave our meter on. It takes 15 minutes to warm up. So if you turn it off, you have to wait 15 minutes and then recalibrate it. So we just leave it on until we're done testing.
Do you want to talk through that we're going to do? We're going to grade it for observations as well. Okay, let's get the group for consensus. So weather. Oh, we don't have smoky.
No, we'll make a note of it. So now we have to grade things and put down what the environment is like at this time. So it asks for weather. It's clear today, but it's very smoky. So in the notes we will write smoky down, but there's a number value for clear that she'll document that on. So
Okay, so clear and sunny is a 0.
0.
And odor.
Odor, the water had no odor.
So it's another 0. Algae.
There's no algae in there. If
And,
you look out on the river, there's no foam flowing down the river.
and when we looked at the water in the bucket,
It's
the
not
water was clear.
wasn't clear, not turbid. Turbidity means how clear the water is. If it would have been raining and a lot of sediment coming down, the water turns brown. That's turbid. But it's clear right now.
And then we look at the water in the river, to see if there's any evidence of oil.
So there's no oil in there.
So we have another 0. And did you notice any litter?
No litter around the...
A 0 with that. And color?
Is clear,
So
so
there
it's a
was
0. And there's no invasive
no
species
evidence of
plants.
invasive species.
No.
We got everything, right?
Bacteria testing is something we've just this year started to do, and Claudia works with the lab, and she's going to talk about how we're going to do it out here. So, okay. So when you open your bottle, you want to open the lid with one hand and hold it with the other one, and then you want the other person to pour it into the bottle. And try not to touch the lid. Okay. That's good. And there's a line here that indicates it's 100 mils, which if you go slightly over, that's fine. But you want to leave a little bit of an air gap just to be able to mix the sample. And there's your site 1 sample.
Boom. Okay, so we have one more test to do on site. That's a turbidity test. It tests the cloudiness of the water, how much suspended sediments are in the water. So Dylan's going to dip the vial into the water. It's a very small vial. And he's going to seal it up. Okay, now one of the most important things is that Dylan has a piece of cloth that we need to have the vial perfectly clean on the outside, because if your fingerprints are on the vial, it will read your fingerprints and think it's cloudiness of water. So it's going to send light through the glass to test the turbidity. So we're going to walk over to the meter and we'll go and test that.
Yeah, 3 times.
Okay, so this is the meter. Let's turn it a little bit. So Dylan's going to test it. So the vial has to go in a specific way. There's an arrow on the vial, and the arrow has to match the little arrow on the meter. So he's going to put that in. Now he's going to press a read on it. Sending some light through there, and it's going to get a reading. So 1.46 for turbidity.
1 in 4,600.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take 3 tests for an average on this also. So Dylan will take it out, he'll slightly invert it, and then put it back in there. And he doesn't want, you don't want to shake it up. You don't want air to get in there. Reading 1.59.
1 in 5,900.
Lab jobs.
Okay, 1.55.
So what's important about this site is that this private property is above the City of Lodi's storm drain system. So this is our control. This is water that has not been touched by any runoff from the City of Lodi. And this time of year, no rain of course, but there's a lot of nuisance water coming off the streets, which is over irrigation from people's lawn landscapes. And often that's carrying pollutants like
Fertilizers, nitrates.
There's your nitrates,
So-
yeah, pesticides, herbicides, soap from people washing cars, people emptying their swimming pools, or whatever other nasty things they're doing on the streets is going to run out here. So, but this water should be super clean. Though, I will be completely honest, there is a homeless camp upstream from here, and there's a homeless camp downstream from here. So the bacteria test will be really interesting to see what we get on that. It's E. coli specifically that we're looking for. So there we go. Off to
Good.
the next site.
Okay.
Number 3.
and then we're going to have an outbreak.
Okay, first note, you have people swimming in the river.
Okay, downs.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to do a nitrate test. It's a test strip that you do just a quick dip, and then we're going to have to let it sit for a minute, and once we let it sit, we'll end up comparing it to this chart right here, but we have to let it sit for a little bit, so we'll wait. So we're going to compare the nitrates. You look, there's no color to it. They would change pink, so nitrates are at 0. Nitrates are fertilizers or animal waste in the water that create fertilizer.
So this is Site 9. We're right below the Woodridge Irrigation District Dam. This is the lower part of the Pony River. And the importance of this site actually is to compare it to Site 1. We can ask the question, how does the City of Lodi's storm drain system impact the river? And if you were able to look at the data from Site 1 and compare it to Site 9, you get the answer to that question. That's what we've seen over 20 years of monitoring, is that the data will go ooh in between, but it usually comes back, if not better than actually as it went in, mostly because of the work of the dynamics of a river. Basically, sediment drops out and the water quality actually improves.
Nope, we're going to get it before they
Oh, they stir it up?
yeah.
Too late.
Okay, Kathy, was this our last read? Power down. Got it? Just want to make sure before I turn it off.
Okay, so Judd, I'm going to put your name on.
All right, that was an afternoon of sampling. I tell you, Kathy, you guys were busy.
Oof, yeah, takes a long time.
How long does it actually take to do the whole thing?
My time on my clock, I usually get there, Dylan and I usually get there before the teachers show up so we can get going on starting the calibration. It's probably, well, the COVID time takes about 4 hours, 4 solid hours, 4.5 hours.
Wow.
When there's students, then we can divide up and conquer a lot quicker, a lot more quickly. So we're done within 2 hours. And by the end of the school year, once those kids are experienced and know what they're doing, we're in and out of there within an hour and a half. It goes so fast.
Yeah, so you're missing your student helpers this year, aren't you?
I am, my D's, yeah. So it's been actually good for the teachers, I think, to go to each site. Through the whole summer we did this, even when they were on summer break. The same group monitored, along with Claudia from the lab, or Justin from the lab, and so we got really solid about kind of our routine, which I appreciated. So when those students come back, we're ready.
Right.
We're
Right.
ready.
Well, we got a couple questions that came in during the video. So one was a note that that they weren't wearing gloves. Another's kind of related is there is a document that tells how samples should be collected. I know the teachers were doing a lot of the teaching as well. In fact, that's one of the purposes of that video, was to actually help teach the students how to sample. But your quality assurance monitoring plan, your quality assurance plan, when did that get developed? How do you guys implement that? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the same State Water Resource Control Board, the State Water Board helped us write that QAPP back in, I think it was 2003 or 4. It was a US EPA boilerplate, pretty much citizen monitoring document that the city worked on, and that's pretty much what we follow. It's way more rigorous than what we've been able to do with students. So what you're seeing is a stripped down version, as simple as possible, with our laboratory staff involved and kind of keeping an eye on whether or not we're doing things correctly. But yeah, gloves, we've been told, and you may disagree, gloves have not been pointed out as something that we need to have on. In the old days when we were actually using chemicals to do some of those testing, then yes, but not so now. So I don't know who's asking that question, but that's a conversation I'd like to have with that person.
Yeah, no, I saw a question, plus it occurred to me, one of the reasons we use gloves or require people to wear gloves is it's more protection to the sampler, also sample integrity. We don't want to get something smeared on a jar, but you never know what you're actually sampling. Although we would hope the McColmy River would be clean, you never know what you might actually be getting yourself into. So gloves are always a good PPE to be in a sampling situation. I've been in situations that I thought were relatively harmless, and then all of a sudden you realize that, oh, there's something we weren't expecting. So gloves are always a good addition.
Yeah,
all right.
We can do that. We have, yep. Another
Another question that has come up actually in other workshops this year, and it occurred to me, and plus I think Steve also piggybacked on that. It would be very interesting to see what influence all the wildfires and the smoke and ash has had regionally on water quality. So it would be something, I know you guys do a lot of trend analysis and you look at weather, you look at temperature. It'd be really interesting to see if this year's data changes from last year or even previous years.
Yeah, that's a good point. We actually had that thought last year. And I know the growers in the area were impacted by cooler weather because of the smoke cover. But water quality, that we'd have to look at it.
And I know some of the wineries have been talking about smoke tinge to their vintage this year. So yeah, you bring up a good point, because was it last year or the year before? I think it was the year before, we had those paradise fires during probably some of your sampling events. I think it was October, November.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting to take the events that you were sampling related to heavy smoke cover and see if you see a difference between that and years or sample events that did not have that.
Yeah, that would be a good student. I would put students on that. That would be a good question for a teacher to ask, and let the kids figure out how to answer that question based on the data that's available online. Yeah, that's a good one.
And then maybe next year for Stormwater Awareness Week, you can share your findings on that, and it'd be interesting. Of course, what would we expect to see, perhaps? right off the top of my head would be pH alterations, most likely, because, you know, ash is used actually to make lye, a soap ingredient, which would be more caustic. So we would expect that. Turbidity, perhaps, and possibly other things that are contained in the ash. So,
I'm taking notes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Again, tell us where do you want storm drain detectives to go in the future? I mean, obviously, this is about educating children, educating the community, but what is your long-range goals for this organization?
It's a good question. I think, and I can only see short distance at a time, but I would really like to see the next step be that we connect more with the school district from their upcoming permit requirements. I would like them to take some responsibility to make this happen, whatever that means, either providing transportation. As it stands now, I've had to write grants to get money to pay for heritage students, the fifth graders that used to be part of this program. In order to get them to the monitoring sites, we had to pay for that Lodi van to carry the kids. I'd love the district to start ponying up some of the responsibility here and more of a partnership. I think that's what I'm looking for, is it not always be on the city's shoulders. I think that's what sustainability means, is that it's not always us that runs the show, that some of our partners start taking on some of that responsibility and also reap the rewards. I mean, that it become more integrated in the actual classrooms as well. The teachers are, if not monitoring, at least accessing the data and bringing those questions, especially now with the way science is going, these STEM and GSF, the way of thinking is that the kids discover the answers after they've been not forced, but asked questions or asked to look at new situations and then try to figure out how to find the answers. And the monitoring, you know, all the so I was going to say that also that the monitoring that we do is just a small part of the rest of the watershed programs. To limit our focus just to the monitoring, it kind of gets old. But if you're fitting it together with, okay, so what else is going on in that watershed? That's where it really gets interesting. Like the fisheries and the lumber industries upstream and runoff from the city and agriculture. All those inputs are, once the kids see all those then the water quality kind of makes more sense.
So am I hearing in that statement, Kathy, that Kathy Grant may want to retire someday? Moss Stormwater might actually retire?
No. This is actually, I was laughing with a friend the other night that I find COVID, this whole new, I maybe would have retired by now, but this is such a new challenge that it's very exciting to adapt, to keep it going. And I think we've improved because the teachers have taken it on and they own it, and that's cool. So I could step away right now and those teachers would keep it going.
Oh, that's
now
great.
I want the district. Yeah, I want the district to come to the table.
And
administration.
And there's a new impetus for the district to do just that, because as I think will be talked about even this afternoon, the new phase 2 MS4 permit that will be coming out will be pulling in school districts, and they're going to have an education and outreach aspect. In fact, that's going to be one of the areas of that permit that they're really emphasizing, is that education aspect.
Yeah, so I'm waiting for them. I'm at the river. Tell them to come.
Yeah, I think we're about a year and a half from seeing that permit out. So we'll see what happens. But right now, it looks like the school districts are definitely in. Of course, we won't know until it actually comes out. Now, let's look back a little bit. you've had a lot of students go through. I don't know if you even have an estimation of how many students have gone through the Stormwater Detectives program.
Yeah,
Uh,
thousands, 2 to
thousands.
3,000 is what, yeah, thousands, yeah.
I know this program has shaped the careers of more than one student. Are there any that you can really point to over the years of who they are? Can you even tell us what they're doing now? What, you know, they first became interested in monitoring on one of your field trips like we saw today, and now what are they doing? Is there any success stories that you could point to?
Yeah, there's, well, you know, it all comes down to define your terms. What does success mean? And I would say success means that you understand, or you think like from a watershed perspective. And I can think of people that who are now adults who started out as, you know, students in the program. One of them would be Brett Erickson, who actually was the first group of students that started with the program in 2000, and she was a Lodi High student, senior, who actually designed the website, wrote the text, along with another student from Liberty High, Kelsey Cordner, and they did it. They owned it. They actually named the program. It was those students. And Brett now is one of our park commissioners for the city of Lodi. She's a teacher at Millswood School. She's a middle school teacher, and I expect her next month at the river with her own students. That's success. That's the full loop. I mean, there's others that, you know, there's a UC Berkeley student now that's reached back and needs help with his paper, and he's using his experience at the river to start with as a foundation. But I think another measure of success is that we have allowed a lot of students to create sort of a network of connections of people that they can then turn back and rely on or find their way to answering questions. It's sort of like an ecosystem of professionals. They understand now how cities work. They understand what a wastewater plant is. They know how our drinking water is treated. They understand all those little parts that they may not have if they hadn't gone through the program. There was a student at Tokay High a few years ago, actually probably 10 years ago now, that worked with Mrs. Starr, Sandy Starr, who helped start their Go Green Club. And I met him and his wife and his 3 kids at Coastal Cleanup just a few years ago. Circling back in a different way, is that a measure of success? Yes. They've become stewards of, you know, the land, the water, and they've joined the community. I guess that's what we're doing, is we're creating a watershed community that actually gets involved and takes responsibility.
Okay, well, great, and yeah, that is a sign of success when you have people who started in the program and now they're taking the reins. How exciting that she's now bringing her own students to the water to test. That is a true sign of success. Well, one more question, at least from me, and if others have questions, feel free to type it in or unmute yourself. But okay, you've been doing this for 20 years or plus. In the community, let's just step back and look community-wide, the Lodi, greater Lodi area. Are there any signs that this education, this program, has changed public perception or changed public behaviors?
Absolutely, yes. When I go to Lodi Lake Park now, if I was to show up at the lake and just walk around, I'm actually struck by how much cleaner it is. The park lands are. There's less trash. I think people have, because of the coastal cleanup, see, this is all the programs are related. So when I can talk about monitoring or coastal cleanups, they're all connected, because it would be those storm drain detective students who actually were required by teachers or went for extra credit. They would be part of the coastal cleanup day at the lake. But I see groups of people now walking around with their own grabbers and buckets cleaning up the lake. Whether or not they understand that they're improving water quality, I don't know, but I'm going to guess that they probably do. I see teachers more engaged, the ones that I work with, but this is interesting to them. That's a change. I think there was a large gap of understanding 20 years ago. People didn't understand where their water came, where their drinking water came from, where their wastewater went. They didn't understand all the people that are involved in between that clean water process, cleaning of the river water to drink or the groundwater to drink, or where it goes after it's used. Now it's totally accessible to these teachers. All they have to do is say, hey, can I have somebody talk to my class and explain how E. coli gets in the river? And we're on it. You know, we've got somebody now, Justin is working at the lab, putting together a PowerPoint, getting ready to present to one of the storm drain detective leaders. So yes, it's changed. We're a tighter community, and we all care about the watershed and clean water and whatever we can do to help people understand the importance of taking personal responsibility to keep that water clean, either from home or at the work, in your workplace or at the lake, wherever you are. It really does require self-government, not your local government doing it for you, but me, myself, taking personal responsibility, and everybody else too. So yeah, I think that's changed. That's a new ethic. We haven't always had that. Yeah,
well, I just want to congratulate you on just a program that's been so exemplary. You know, I've had the privilege of basically watching this program from almost day one for 20 years now. And, you know, I don't know, in the early days, maybe a lot of people viewed it as just a fun outing for the kids to the water. But that fun outing has become very purposeful, and it has transformed our community. I think that no one can really argue that there has been a behavioral and perspective change. And when you take thousands of students over those 20 years to there, and it's not just them, it's them going home and talking to their parents and their siblings. And now, you know, the younger siblings can't wait to get into storm drain detectives.
Yep, that's true.
So,
right. and John, I just want to say thank you to WGR. You've been a partner and a friend from the beginning. I can remember the first rainstorm that I went out to the river to sample water coming right out of the outfall, and it blew out of my hand. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
and I lost my bottle, and I had to come to your office and get more bottles. It was kind of silly, but I really appreciate your mentorship.
It's been our pleasure, and you know, we love teaching people, but there's no better person to teach than a kid. You know, adults are great, and I love, you know, it's fun teaching all of you that are on this call, but teaching a kid is so much more enjoyable. So thank you for the privilege of being a part of that. All right, well, I don't see any other questions, Kathy. Just a couple last comments from you. If somebody wants to get a hold of you to ask questions, how can they get a hold of you?
Email me, or that'll work, or even call or text. I'm very available. I'd love
What's
to hear
your
from
email?
anyone.
What's your email?
kgrant@lodi.gov.
kgrant@lodi.gov. All right, and it's an appropriate name because Kathy has to go after a lot of grants. So, so all right.
Name of the game.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for attending this Stormwater Awareness Week workshop. And I'm sure if you want to be in person at one of these sampling events, I don't think Kathy will turn you down. She probably could use all of the pairs of hands that she could get. So definitely reach out to her. All right. Well, hopefully you can enjoy some of the other workshops still coming up. And there's some municipal ones this afternoon. Have a good lunch. We'll talk to you guys later. Thank you, Kathy.
No, you're welcome, John. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.